Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Max Velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be breaking down a huge pattern change that'll be coming to the United States later this week. And this pattern change is going to change a ton of things across the United States. This includes the potential for severe weather as we get closer to Thursday and Friday, anywhere from the southern and central plains back into the Midwest. In addition to this, there is going to be a large cold blast that'll impact a very large chunk of the United States as we head into this upcoming weekend. I'll be giving you the latest breakdown on everything that you need to know in this forecast, but let's first begin with what's happening right now in the United States today, and we'll begin with the East Coast, and this is where we've had a large storm ongoing for the past several days now. This low pressure system currently centered back up in northern New England, and this storm in particular has brought as much as over a foot of snow to areas like Mount Washington back into northern Maine. Even parts of Vermont and upstate New York have seen a ton of snow over the last 24 hours. Now, this system is moving off to the north and east, and all that's left is on the backside of this low pressure system is lake effect snow, which will continue to fall across areas like Pennsylvania, New York, perhaps even up to Maryland, and as well as even into northern Ohio for the next 12 to maybe 18 hours or so before this entire system moves off to the north and northeast. But notice behind this, there's hardly anything happening right now. We actually have clear skies for much of the country today, and it's going to stay like this, by the way, all the way through about Tuesday or so before we have the return of severe weather for some areas like the central and southern plains and perhaps even the Midwest by the mid to late week. So a lot of things to break down this weather forecast, but for now, pretty nice weather overall. Back over on the West Coast, it's actually pretty active there, and it's been active there for the last several months now. Really unprecedented type rainfall that has been falling across areas like California, Washington, Oregon, and that's going to continue even all the way through the early weeks. So definitely an active weather pattern over there. Now back up in the north and east, there is still some lake effect snow falling at this hour, primarily across areas in Pennsylvania and western New York, but a lot of this will start to wind down tonight. A little bit of snowfall remaining in northern New England overnight tonight and tomorrow morning. Eventually, as we go into Tuesday into Wednesday, all this snow is pretty much done. So this system overall going to bring a little bit more snowfall tonight, and then it's going to start to taper down for many areas. All right, let's talk more about that weather pattern that'll be impacting the United States over the next several days, and we're going to begin with the jet stream because this gives us an idea of the weather patterns that are happening across the United States. And keep in mind, this shows us the upper level winds, so this is not what's exactly happening at the surface, but it plays a factor into the weather that we're seeing here across the country. Beginning with tonight, notice that low pressure system is still back up in the north and east. We have a very strong jet stream back down right along the east coast, and that's going to actually promote more turbulence if you are flying on an airplane, either going north to south or south to north. So just keep that in mind if you have any travel plans tonight. Once we go into tomorrow and eventually into Tuesday, things very inactive across the country. Can't complain, by the way. It's been a very active last 7 days or so. We went live literally 4 times last week. 3 of those were in a row. It's really rare that we go live 3 days in a row for severe weather, but that's how active it has been recently across the country. Once we go into Wednesday, we're gonna have a low pressure system moving into the Rocky Mountains, and this is going to be our next large storm that is going to promote an increased risk of severe weather, especially across the southern plains. But with that being said, I wouldn't rule out some severe weather in areas like the central plains and even back up into the Midwest. There will at least be some sort of conditional or isolated risk of severe weather, but this will really focus itself across areas down in the southern plains and eventually in the Dixie Alley. But notice this as we go into Thursday into Friday. This low pressure system is actually going to drift to the south and west, something we don't see very often, and this is going to be a closed low, so it has a mind of its own. But what this is going to allow for as we go into Saturday is a low pressure system to come out of Canada, and this is actually going to bring us a cold blast, and it's going to usher a lot of cold air into much of the United States. A bit of a rare little storm that we're going to see here in the later half here, winter, over in areas like Canada, and this will allow for a cold blast anywhere from the central and southern plains back into the Midwest and Ohio Valley. And I'll show you the temperatures here in just a second, but it's definitely going to get pretty cold across many areas in the Midwest. Now, obviously, we are getting very close to spring, so it's not going to be negative 50 degrees, for example, in the Midwest, but we are probably going to get close to the 20s, 10s, maybe even closer to 0 in some areas. Here's what it looks like on the temperature anomalies. So notice above average temperatures anywhere east of the Rocky Mountains all the way through the midweek. Once we go into the later half of the week, we're going to have a little bit of a cold air mass back over in the high plains. That's not really going to bring much cold air, though, for many areas, at least populated areas across areas like the central and southern plains. Once we go to Friday into Saturday, notice that low pressure system back up in Canada. That's where it is right there. Strong northerly winds will usher in a lot of colder air as we go into Saturday and Sunday, and this could actually dive all the way down into the southern and central plains once we go into Monday and Tuesday of next week. And something that becomes very uncertain by the middle of next week is how large this cold blast will get. Notice the European model grows this thing massively across much of the Great Plains, the East Coast, the Ohio Valley, the Southeast. So this is something we're going to have to monitor very closely. But with that being said, we are still talking about an event that is still about 7 to 10 days out from now. With that being said, there is definitely some increasing confidence of this happening, but exactly what happens really after Monday or Tuesday is really uncertain. And some of the main details, like exactly how cold it'll get, is also a little bit uncertain. But this is what the European model thinks in terms of how cold the temperatures will get. This is what we're looking at as of Sunday morning. Many areas back up in the Midwest and Northern Plains diving into the teens and 20s. Once we go into Monday, temperatures for low temperature specifically going into the 20s and teens across many areas. We actually could go below freezing in the Texas Panhandle. Once we go into Tuesday morning, things continue to cool down across much of the southern and central plains. But again, if it actually gets below freezing in these areas, does remain somewhat uncertain. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Click the bell icon down below. We'll keep you posted with the latest. These are the wind chills Sunday morning as well. Notice many areas, even back in the northern plains, will feel like near 0 degrees. So it's going to get pretty cold overall. Obviously, this is nothing compared to what we saw 2 months ago with that large Arctic blast, but this is definitely still relatively cold, even for mid-March standards here across much of the country. Now let's talk more about that severe weather potential as we go into this upcoming week. And we're going to begin with Tuesday, which is tossing trampolines on Tacos Tuesday. We do currently have a marginal threat of severe weather across areas near Kansas City, back into northeast Oklahoma. Main concern right now will be large hail, some isolated damaging winds. Won't rule out a brief tornado, but I do think that risk is overall going to stay pretty low. And then the risk will actually increase as we go into Thursday, which is tossing trampolines on tall trees Thursday. We do have a slight risk of severe weather right now for those back down in southeast Oklahoma, southwest Arkansas, northwest parts of Louisiana, and north Texas, and even back into eastern Texas. The main concern for Thursday will be all modes of severe weather, damaging winds, large hail, primary concerns. Also, a few tornadoes cannot be ruled out. And there is a chance that we do get an upgraded risk on this, perhaps to an enhanced risk as we get closer, but confidence needs to grow on the overall threat for that to happen. Notice a lot of areas not included in this, but I wouldn't rule out severe weather further north. Obviously, there will be a marginal threat attached to this, so there very easily could be a larger area here covered with that risk once we get closer. So make sure you stay tuned. All right, let's go into the future radar, give you an idea of what's happening next week in terms of severe weather. As we go into Tuesday, things relatively dry across the country. I'm not expecting much, at least anywhere east of the Rocky Mountains. If you're back on the West Coast, some snow and rain will continue. Once we go into late Tuesday night, there will be the chance for a couple of severe storms back down in eastern Kansas and Missouri. Overall, low risk of severe weather. Low pressure system develops over the central plains by Wednesday. This will promote at least some elevated risk of severe weather in north central parts of Missouri, perhaps even into Illinois as we go into late Wednesday night into Thursday morning. By late Thursday, that's when severe weather will ramp up across areas like Texas. This will ramp up really quickly, and I'm not ruling out the potential for some isolated keyword, isolated severe weather back up in Illinois as we go into Thursday. Why I say that with emphasis is because the moisture content does not look great right now for areas like Illinois, which means the overall risk of severe weather should remain low since the moisture is going to be on the lower side of things. So just keep that in mind. I'm not expecting a severe weather outbreak in the Midwest at this point, as like we had a couple weeks ago with that tornado outbreak back on February 27th. Once we go into late Thursday night to Friday, this storm moves to the east, possibly a little bit of a mix of rain and snow back in like areas like Michigan, for example, but snow accumulation not really a factor right now. Once we go to Friday, some showers and thunderstorms across the southeast, and then as we go into Saturday into Sunday, things become a little bit more uncertain, but as long as that large low pressure system comes out of Canada, I'm not ruling out some snow in areas like the Midwest and perhaps more thunderstorms down to the south. European model shows snow all the way down into Texas as we go into early next week. I am not really forecasting that right now. Really uncertain on that for sure. We're way too far out to be talking about that. And then classic European model showing a nor'easter back up in the northeast as we go into the late week. So obviously all this stuff after about Monday or so, really uncertain. I doubt this will happen, but obviously make sure you stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We'll keep you posted with the latest. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe if you've not already.